Thanks for tuning in to Unclogged, a Zoom Drain podcast, where we take an in-depth look at the wins and losses of our niche home service. We're also going to look at best practices on unclogging your business and the pipe dreams that motivate our every move. Are you ready? Let's run it. So I am here with the great Ellen Rohr.
What?
Yes.
Hello.
Absolutely. And
hey,
we're
Andrew.
here. Hey, how are
We're
you?
better together.
We are.
Bam.
That's the last time. That's the last podcast that we did together at the Wet Show. # Better Together.
We are.
We
It's
are
so much
here
fun.
today in our brand new podcast studio, which is fantastic. But this podcast has a little bit of background to it. This
It does.
specific episode does. So we were in California, sunny California, Los Angeles, at a conference for Service Titan. Service Titan is
Pantheon.
the CRM that we use. Yep. Event name was Pantheon, and Ellen had a speaking role there.
Yes.
You had a seminar.
I had a seminar, and the name of the seminar was "Fixing the Mess You've Made with the Way You've Paid." Compensation upgrade.
Yep.
Compensation upgrade.
Yep.
And I ran out of time because it's such a robust topic.
Wait, you ran out of time?
Well, I would say that time management.
You have a wealth of knowledge.
Yes, there's a lot to talk about.
Exactly.
There's a lot to talk about. And so you and I immediately connected that this topic needs more than 35 minutes or an hour and a half or a day. It is a lifelong course of study.
Yeah.
How are you going to pay people? It's dynamic. You don't set it and forget it.
Yeah.
So we're going to do a series.
And this is the first one.
What? Number one.
Yeah. So,
all right.
Say the title again just so that people get it. They know what we're talking about today, and we'll go from there.
Compensation upgrade, fixing the mess you've made with the way you've paid.
Love it.
So for our first class, I'd like to ruin everybody a little bit.
Do it.
Ruining means like, oh, I didn't realize how bad I was.
Right.
And this is really a space of no judgment, only love, because I make these mistakes over and over again. I'm getting better, of course you will, with time. However, we always blow it in some way, shape, or form when it comes to compensating, bonusing, attracting with great pay and benefits the people we want to come work for us.
Yeah.
And we were talking yesterday, we had some prospective candidates for the franchise come, and one of them asked the very good question, what is the one problem that new franchisees, old franchisees, that everybody seems to struggle with day after day? And people is number one.
Recruiting them, retaining them.
Paying them, and it all wraps up. In order to recruit properly, we need to be the employer of choice.
Yeah.
It has to be our reputation. So we can use that to market for new employees. We can help them see where they can grow in the company by laying out the ladder. One of the things that really a ruining moment can be, does every team member on your team know when their next raise is and how they would get it? And if you can't say yes, you might be in the right place for the conversation.
Right.
And then retaining great employees. What does that career path look like? Is there a top of the ladder?
Right.
And if there is, maybe we should be transparent about that. And if we continue to grow, could we expand that ladder and continue to attract great people?
Add a few more rungs to the top, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So let's talk about the mess you've made today.
Okay.
All right. So let's assess the mess.
Exactly. And how we're going to fix it. But we'll get to the fixing part later.
Yeah, we'll get to the fixing part. And this is where, as a trainer, I learned this from the great Harry Friedman. This is called, simmering in the moment of ruin.
Yeah.
As a trainer, as a consultant, as a coach, you have to create the why. And sometimes that's a point of pain, one at which you don't want to stay. So you at least gives you some motivation to change maybe what's happening. And sometimes the mess you've made with the way you pay can be insidious that people don't tell you. That's called quiet quitting.
Which is huge right now. I see it all over LinkedIn. I see multiple opinions on it.
Yeah. And how do we know people are looking for jobs and they're working for you?
Right.
And it's like, oh, what are we doing? What are we missing? He never said anything. She never said anything.
Right.
And the problem with not having these conversations up front is that then an insidious inequity could develop that you maybe not even aware of.
Right.
So certainly one way to assess the mess, gulp, is to talk to your team members and ask them, do you get how you get paid? Does the person who's waiting for you at home, do they get it?
Yeah.
Do they understand it? Do you know how you could move up the ladder? Do you know where your next raise would come from? And just, brace yourselves for like these kind of gut-wrenching moments, because if they don't get it, they might be quietly quitting. They might be suffering in silence. But in any event, we could do much better.
Yeah.
And so some of the ways that we go off track, or, in my career, I've been doing this a long time. Prior to Zoom Drain, it was a service that I offered as a consultant. Let's clean up the way you paid. Now, I'm not going to name names, but I'll tell you a story. So one person that I went to visit, we trotted out, this is how you assess the mess. You're going to trot out the org chart. And if you don't have one, I'll help you make one.
Yeah.
And we just, you can look up org chart on Google and find a sample one.
Yep.
And then you're
Doesn't have to be pretty.
No, a dry erase board, a
Right.
flip chart, a piece of paper. These are fine, that you can kind of move things around. I don't love using Post-its as a way to remember what to do, but Post-its are great for kind of mapping out an org chart.
Right. Just as long as it ends up somewhere, like
a creative
online.
project
Right,
is a good use
exactly.
for Post-its.
Right.
So you're going to map out, what the org chart does two things for us. One, it graphically represents the reporting relationships.
That's very good.
Okay. And
Yeah.
the second thing it does is it shows the ladder of opportunity. So if I come in as a new kid, day one, and I see my name on the org chart and I'm apprentice,
Yeah.
then that apprentice should be reporting to someone who's in charge of my care and feeding, my career development. And number two, what's my next step up? So if you don't have an org chart really forms the basis of this exercise. The creation of the org chart will help you assess the mess.
Yeah.
All right.
Really quickly, on that note, how many times have you walked into a business where the org chart's just not there?
Not there most times.
Okay.
So if you even have an org chart, good on you.
Yeah. Do you show other people in your company?
Oh, such a good point. I think you should show the incoming team member the org chart with their name on it. Day one, rookie, and on the team, has a position
Means
on the
something.
roster. Means a lot. I once saw a company that when the new kid arrived, it was a factory, everybody stopped, stood up, clapped.
Nice.
And the person's supervisor walked the new kid over to the org chart, said, welcome to the team. Here's where you are.
That's
on the
awesome.
team.
Slapped
on the
him right
roster.
on the board.
Right. He's there already.
Yeah.
And so if someone leaves, that should be updated. So the org chart should be in some kind of format that you can update easily.
Yeah.
Side note, Organimi is what we're currently using. And it's not the best app or easiest app I've ever worked with, but it's better than any other app
It'll
I've
do
worked
it.
with to do this.
Yeah.
But you could also do it on a dry erase board. Do it on something that you can update instantly.
Right.
Okay.
Non-permanent marker.
Yeah, not a non-permanent marker.
Right.
Don't make it really fancy. Don't carve the names into the wall, right? Because things are going to change. People are going to move. So as you put this org chart together, what I will do as a consultant, as a franchisor with franchisees, is say, okay, is there a reason why? And then after you kind of map out where everyone currently is, you're going to put what they get paid next to them.
That's scary.
It's super scary. And you're going to do this. Like, by the way, this is a private exercise with a couple trusted team members.
This part is not the public part.
Okay, because one of the ways we can really blow the way we pay is to do it frivolously, or what appears to be frivolous, or without thought, thoughtlessly.
Right.
Okay, nothing is more upsetting to your team members than to change the way they pay without any kind of context or preparation. And even if it means, like, even if you said, hey, guess what? Everybody's getting a raise. There's a good percentage of the population that's going to go, wait, what? What are they taking away? This doesn't sound right. So you want to do all of this very thoughtfully. So behind closed doors, get out the org chart and the pencils and erasers, and then mop out. It was
Mop the
an
room
accent.
first.
mop the table, lay out the paper, and then get going on that, mapping out your org chart. And as you do, then put the names in for where they are. And if you don't have titles, now's a good time to play with titles. Titles are important, as opposed to, that guy who kind of does bookkeeping. Is it a bookkeeper? Call them a bookkeeper.
Right.
So you're going to put the titles on there as you go. All of this in pencil or changeable. And then put how much you pay everybody. And then I'll start asking questions like this. Why does Susie make less than Ben?
Yeah.
And it could be that Susie is a woman. We can't think of any other reason. She's doing the same job, and there's really no other reason.
I mean, the org chart says it.
Well, I'll ask you, is there a reason why Ben makes more than Susie? And
Right.
if there is a behavioral reason, Ben has a sunny attitude. That's not good.
No.
It's not measurable. It's not definable.
It's not concrete.
Not concrete.
Right.
I mean, I'm going to be very behavioral in this process. Does he have a CDL license?
Right.
Has he been there longer?
Right.
Does he have higher average ticket? If there's some reason that someone would make more than someone else, then we should lay it out.
Right.
And if there's not, I'm going to, and you know what the number one reason is?
What?
Ben is squeakier than Susie.
Which explains squeakier. It's a term that we use.
Technical term.
Yeah.
Yeah, a technical term.
Squeakier.
Squeakier.
The noun of.
Yeah, it's just that Ben asked.
Yeah.
And Susie didn't.
Yeah.
And this is where quiet quitting comes from. Some people are just never going to ask. They should notice that I'm doing a great job. Surely they'll notice I'm doing a great job. Now, when I do talk to employees, and if you're an employee listening and you're starting to get, I know that by far and away, most employers, bosses, managers are doing the best they can with the information and understanding that they have. And you are too. So let's start from that moment as we work through this exercise. That said, they're not thinking about your career.
No.
They're too busy. They got 10 other things on their plate.
Yep.
Unless you squeak,
Right.
unless the ladder is clear.
Right. Maybe you've had success elsewhere where, all I have to do is ask, right?
What? Oh, yeah. And as an employee, I was squeaky.
Right.
Right. I was always squeaky. And that can be helpful. Like sometimes, oh man, this guy's up. But sometimes it helps to bring this up. And so consider in your squeakiness, dear employee, if you're listening to this, how could you be part of this conversation in a positive way?
Yeah.
Hey, I don't know where my next raise is coming from. And that would be a good thing for me and my family to know. And if you're interested in my input to help look at the overall way we pay, I'm available.
Would you be opposed to somebody approaching that conversation, right? Employee who, we just talked about being squeaky. Mm-hmm. You could be squeaky can you be squeaky in the right way?
Well, that's what I mean. Just be offering as opposed to like, hey, how come I don't have a raise?
Right.
Or I'm going to leave unless I get a raise.
Right.
There is an opportunity here to lead up.
Okay.
Right. And, and maybe the owners are thinking right now, hey, if somebody came up to me like this, I would think there's the door.
Yeah.
I've been an employee a lot. When I was a kid, I had a lot of jobs and I just have never really lost that sensibility of being somebody who works for somebody else. Yeah. I think we all work for somebody else. Ultimately, we all have a cheese. And I think it's fair to have these conversations. I also do think it's fair, especially if it's a developing company and you're small, to just say, dude, this is the best I can do right now. But let's set a time. Let's take it 6 months from now.
Yeah.
Let me show you the budget. Let me show you what our benchmarks are. If we could get to break even, if we could start making money, we might be able to change this. So keep in mind, all of this is dynamic. That's what I mean about how could we've probably already been discussing, just how we can mess it up for 15 minutes.
Right.
So one way we can mess it up is it's just innately unfair because of squeakiness or lack of squeakiness, or men versus women, right? So there's just some innate prejudices and inequities that might crop up that will be revealed when we do this org chart exercise.
So we've got the names there. Your closed room again.
Still there. Yes, still in the closed room while you have these conversations.
Populating numbers.
Right.
Asking questions. Where do we take it from there?
Yeah, and some things are just like, oh, that's not fair and we should adjust it, or that's a little awkward and we could fix it. And some things are potentially threatening. Yeah. If there is some reason to believe that someone on your team is being discriminated against, that's a business disrupting or ending lawsuit potentially.
Yep.
Right? So this is, another reason why we would want to address this. So another way we can mess up, and this is not uncommon, is that we keep rewarding for sales And we keep overspending because the way we're paying people is killing our profitability.
Right.
All right. So another way we mess up the way we pay is we pay in such a way that is unsustainable for the company. And you know how this happens? Oh, I mean, just consider this. A service tech comes to you and says, hey, I can make $45 somewhere else. So,
Right.
and you really want this guy, he's great. And so you hire him on at 45, and then that same person may balk at your prices.
Right.
Dude, you can't charge that. That's highway robbery. So now there's this pressure to keep the selling prices low
Yep.
when we just, have increased what our labor costs are. So that probably is hitting a few people right between the eyes right now, because I've seen that happen over and over again. We want to do right by our team members, but pop quiz, Andrew.
Yes.
Who pays for everything?
The customer.
The customer.
Yes.
So if we are going to pay our team members more, it will probably result in an increase in prices.
Yeah.
When gas prices go up,
Yep.
when insurance prices go up, and all these things
It is quite literally no different from
Yes.
labor pricing going up.
Right.
Right.
Now there are some other dynamics, like the more efficient, the more effective our
Yeah.
team members are. Certainly, we're going to find some cost savings there. But overall, the basic math is that, if we want to be able to afford to pay people as well as we think they should deserve or they want, then our prices are going to have to reflect that. And then that what is expected from those team members should ratchet up.
Yeah.
So they should be able to sell at higher prices, for example.
Yep.
So you're mapping this out, though. You're assessing the mess at first. And one small tip, and this is still, we haven't announced anything or
Right.
changed anything, but in
Closed door.
pencil,
Yep.
right on the org chart, if Susie and Ben are literally doing the same job, then we move Susie up,
Yeah.
Ben never down.
Yeah.
So you don't want
that's
any,
huge.
right?
Oh my goodness.
You don't want anybody, I'm paying you too much. So, and consider what that would do to somebody. Okay, I just can't afford this. I'm going to have to pay you less. This is not uncommon, but it's always bad.
Right.
So you say to Ben, I've got to knock you back down. Now Ben has to go tell whoever's waiting for him at home, I just got knocked down. Well, why?
He's not coming back.
Might not come back.
he's not coming
and
back.
his partner is not going to be happy.
Right.
And another way we mess things up over and over again, like that's why I asked, do you know how you get paid? Does the person who's waiting
Right.
for you at home know how you get paid?
Right.
Because if they don't know, this little voice of distrust gets louder and louder. And
Yeah.
ultimately the voice at home will be louder than your voice.
And we've actually, that phrase we've used with our podcast with Teresa, a huge piece of retention. Oh my goodness.
Mm-hmm.
You'll have to find out how to use it to your, to keep everybody informed. But that voice of home, it's so huge.
Yes.
So
Now, one more thought as we do this. Do we want to wrap this one up?
No, let's keep
are we
rolling.
good? Okay,
Yeah.
let me share one more thought about this. When you look at the overall org chart, start with the frontline people. And
So you're
leave the
saying you
managers
don't start at the
alone.
top.
No, don't start at the top.
start at the bottom.
Yeah, and some different rules might apply
Yeah.
as you move up the org chart. But for starters, the easiest place to start would be in a service company,
Yeah.
would be with apprentice to tech to senior tech to field supervisor. And we have to give a shout out to Al Levy
Yeah.
here because Al and I spent a lot of time on this particular project. He was responsible for developing the organizational ladder of opportunity, and inherent in that is an idea that you would make more money as you move up the ladder.
Right.
And then what I was responsible for once upon a time is like, how would that work? How much would we pay? And even all my clients, and certainly, my colleagues
to business, specific to
every
industry.
franchisee gets to
Right.
decide how much they're going to pay their
Right.
people. But this overall construct of, when does bonus kick in?
Yep.
How does the house win first? Those are some of the details that we worked out along
Yeah.
the way.
Now you mentioned we've got Susie and Ben.
Yep.
Down at the bottom, you move Susie up to Ben.
Okay.
You mentioned responsibilities or job description. How do you make sure that they are, doing the same work now at the same price? Like,
Okay.
where do you document that? What do you do?
Perfect. And so just consider you've got this we should probably put some no, just picture it in your mind's
Yes.
eye. Let's put a whiteboard in
Everybody
front of your
close your
mind's
eyes.
eye.
Whiteboard in front of your eyes.
Mind's eye. And we're using Post-its right now.
Yes.
And the Post-its lay out the basic organizing structure. So there's the king or the queen, the cheese, and then there's the managers for financial manager, marketing manager, sales manager, service manager, warehouse and fleet. That's how ours goes across the top. So there's the managers. And then we're going to have the frontline employees. And we're going to move those Post-its around. Let's just look at the service manager for a moment. And we're going to end up with a ladder of opportunity that's going to look something like apprentice or never ever.
Right.
And then technician or junior tech,
Right.
senior tech level 2. Field supervisor now becomes our junior management position. And under the field supervisor would be his or her team.
Right.
There'd be another field his or her team with that same construct, apprentice to tech to senior tech.
Yep.
All right. So we got that pretty well structured out. And then using the team we have, we might go, well, okay, the difference between a junior tech and a senior tech is that the senior tech knows how to do 2 disciplines.
Right.
Okay, they can do drains and plumbing at your company. Oh, okay, there's a reason to believe. And how do we get that construct? Well, look at what you're already doing.
Yeah.
Like that can really color this. So, going back to the fellow I was talking about that I did this exercise for, we're at this point in the exercise.
Yeah.
Post-its are up. We're moving them around. Susie and Ben, we're trying to figure that out. And we're trying to figure out what is the justification behaviorally for people making different wages. And at the time, he had 25 employees. All 25 were paid differently. All of them are supposed to be under this cone of silence.
Right.
Now,
Like, hey, don't tell anybody.
Don't tell anybody.
But
just don't. Right. So now you leave the manager's office or the owner's office. Don't tell anybody.
Yeah, now you're
as
looking
soon
over
as you
your
leave,
shoulder.
right? As soon as you leave the office, someone's saying, "What was that about?
Right.
How much do you get paid?"
Right.
It happened. Like again, as an employee, I always knew what everybody else made, and we were always in the cone of silence. But we just told each other. Just saying, they do, and they can.
Yeah.
And part of the reason it's inequitable is because we're asking them to behave in this cone of silence.
Right.
So again, these are still things. I'm not saying I'm an end-all expert. I just know where it can go south and know where we should be willing to have some vulnerable conversations. Yeah. But it's a little bit easier. I'm telling you, it's easier to do the service techs than some of the other areas of your business. So let's start with that.
Right.
So we're going to be looking at those position descriptions. What, associated with the Post-it that says apprentice, what are the behavioral things we would expect an apprentice to do in order to keep his job at that pay?
Okay.
Or her job at that pay. Does that make sense?
It does.
So what are the bare minimums that they would have to do, that they'd have to show up clean, sober, on time, dressed right, willing to use a checklist? Like that might be the apprentices. So what does clean mean? Okay, so keep in mind, if that's what the apprentices is required to do, those things,
they all need descriptors.
they form the table of contents for their manual.
Yeah, that's good.
So that's why one of the things Al taught me was that we don't do position descriptions so much as we create the table of contents for the manual, because now that apprentice manual, if something gets added to it and it's in their manual, it's their responsibility. But we have to define what clean is. That means their hair, their nails, their tattoos, their uniform, the whole 9 yards.
Yep.
And then clean, sober. What's our drug testing policy? Who's responsible? When does it happen? Et cetera. On time. So what is the time that they're supposed to be in?
Right.
How many times? And then you can figure out a little like progressive correction action. How many times can someone violate these things and still keep their job? That's going to go into your employee manual, at least the technician's manual.
Right.
On time, clean, sober, on time, dressed right. This would be the uniform.
Yeah.
And then use a checklist. So anything that we have a checklist for, here's how to restock the truck.
Yep.
Here's how to park the truck.
On that very basic level of apprentice, it is their training checklist.
It's the same thing. So the
Yes.
manual does so many good things
Yes.
for us, and it's all born in this exercise, right? It's going to be what we hold them accountable to. It's their training curriculum, and it's also their resource to remember what they're supposed to do and how to do it.
For the price point that they're getting paid.
Yes. That's the ideal.
Yes.
Right. And so we're going to then, what makes so if one is at an apprentice, and if I were your apprentice, I'd say, what on my first day? Looking at the org chart, what's a question I might ask? Here you are as an apprentice.
Yeah. How do I get there?
How do I get there?
Right.
So how you get there is you learn what the tech position is required to do.
Yeah.
And so you're going to hash that out. What does the tech do different from what the apprentice does?
Right.
Well, the
so
tech
many
can
hours
do
of
these
training.
Well,
with
let's
these
say they can do
tasks.
those 5 tasks.
Right.
Right. So an apprentice doesn't have maybe any tasks they're responsible for, just, those basics.
Right.
And then to become a tech, maybe they're required to learn and master good enough. Let's not say master, be proficient at these 5 or 10 tasks.
Right.
And that's how you get then to a tech level 2.
Right.
There's 5 more tasks or a whole nother discipline that we add on. And you can imagine at this point you might go, well, maybe we should have dedicated plumbing techs. Maybe we should have a dedicated HVAC.
Right.
Or you might say, let's cross-train.
Now, you talked about not bringing somebody down based on,
Right.
We always want to bring people up to the pay level. What happens if Rob right here, he's looking at his training checklist and he doesn't have as much as this, but he has some of this, right?
Okay, so he's
it's
being
a mixture
paid.
of above and below.
That's a great question. So according to this exercise,
Yeah.
Rob sold the owner one day on paying him $45 an hour.
Good on you, Rob.
Good on you, Rob.
Good
It's
on
good
you.
to be Rob.
Yeah.
So we look at what Rob is and what the position he's in, and we have communication with Rob that, Rob, you can't go any higher until you go back and fill in the gaps. And this will happen it happens with us as franchisor. Our early on franchisees aren't getting the training that the new guys are getting.
Right.
So we've got our franchisees in levels now, level 1, level 2, level 3, and a level 3 franchisee, when we look at the path that new franchisees are taking, should go back and compete.
Yeah.
And some of it's good to be you, right? You got in early.
I think it's an opportunity for Rob to look at it and say, oh my goodness, look at what I missed. Look at what I can get based on what I missed.
Yes.
Right?
And if we are truly a training organization, if Rob is at that position and responsible for, developing new kids, who may even be reporting to him, this is the opportunity to go back and learn it the Zoom way or your way, the way you want folks to do it at your company. So that's how you're going to clean this up a little bit. And here, one more thing on this. Suppose you have one guy at your company, you're paying straight commission.
Yeah.
Everyone else is getting paid hourly. You could say, I'm going to grandfather you in the way you're being paid now. Let's not change you.
Yeah.
Let's just start with new kids.
Why would you do that though? Is it because he's responding a different way? Like when you approach this conversation with him, is he going,
maybe the way I'm
like
paying
the way-
him is completely unsustainable, but he likes it. And if you want him to stay, like if changing the way I pay is going to cause him to have a pay decrease, I might not want to do it. But here, this is a really
juicy,
tough question.
Juicy
Question
Yes.
here. Do you want that guy to stay?
That's a very good point. Maybe he is the reason why you're in the mess.
This brings up so much stuff. Yeah. So vulnerable is the right word. That's why you want to keep this conversation really at a high trust level. Yeah. Again, cone of silence will only keep you guys from blowing up your team. You could tell them this. I don't want to talk to you about what we're doing specifically, but I will say we're looking at how we pay people and we want to make it better. We want to be the employer of choice. Yeah. If you've got some things about the way you get paid right now that are confusing or you don't like, why don't you write them down for me? Because now's a good time for me to bring that input to this meeting. So you can tell them what you're doing, but don't get stuck in the weeds because it might not
Don't
last.
bring them now into the cone of silence of you working on this as a project.
But you can be transparent that we are working on it, and that might be really effective. So in the meantime, one of the ways to assess the mess is to put a wage freeze across your company and just say, I need to get my arms around this. I'm working on it with blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. and we're going to spend time in this. The due date for this project is 2 months from now.
Yeah.
Input is encouraged. Give me a hot minute, and then just buy yourself a little bit of time. Now, caveat there.
Yeah.
If you've already promised someone a raise, you have to give them that raise. You can't have him go back
Right.
and tell the person who's waiting for him at
Right.
home that they changed their mind. Why? Did you do something? No, not that I know of. They're going to go, you're getting messed with
Yeah.
here, right? So it's just it's dynamic, it's challenging, but it's so worth it to have these conversations.
It is, and I think you've done a terrific job of introing this as a series, because this is a big conversation.
Big
for a lot of
conversation.
people.
I'm so glad you brought up doing a podcast series
Yeah.
on this.
Yeah.
And if you've got questions, email them to us.
Yeah, we
if
want
you
to
have
answer
specific
them.
issues you want us, we will use alternate names and not expose anyone. It's
No.
really sensitive stuff. So
Yeah.
I'm not going to be sharing names particularly, and I will change the details to make it even safer.
Give the audience at home right now, assessing the mess. I mean, there's a lot of things on how it got there, but you have to look at it. What's next after this?
Here's your homework.
Yes.
Okay, your homework before the next episode is to mock up your org chart and look for some obvious issues.
Yeah.
All right. And then maybe assemble the team that you want to work on improving the way you pay. And
As
you
a project.
As a project.
2
So
months from now, you're buying time.
you're buying a little bit of
Set the
time,
stage.
maybe a wage freeze if necessary,
Yeah.
and let them know we'll get going on this. So that will be your homework until we get
Wonderful.
to episode 2. And then
Yes.
I'm going to, just so you know, let's start with the easy ones. So we'll start with the frontline team, with the service technicians, and maybe the office positions. I've got some good ideas for ways that you can make that fair and equitable. So take a deep breath.
So good.
Yeah. Okay.
So good. You've got your homework. We've got ours. We'll see you soon. Thanks for watching.